I might mention, as we've said, Katina's from the Arizona State University, but she is from the delightfully named School for the Future of Innovation in Society and the School of Computing and Augmented Intelligence. So what could be more appropriate for our project than that background, Katina? So over to you, please, for your insight on this.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Bharath, and all the previous speakers. ASU is really excited to be part of this international team. It's a truly transdisciplinary team, bringing together a lot of different skill sets with diverse methodologies being melded in. Nothing to hide that many of our staff in the academic realm at ASU have actually worked for government, and one of our members was part of the Office of Technology Impact Assessment there in the 80s before it was rebadged and reoriented. But we even started a Masters of Science major concentration in public interest technology, where one of the core subjects that we teach there is on technology impact assessment. And so we are hoping that we are also educating so many people to come into government and industry with a background ready to go in technology impact assessment. Really what we want here, I'm going to call it the 4 Ps, really to identify that purpose that Karthik talked about, the plan of action, which Greg was talking about, the process which Bharath took us through, and how we get into practice with all of these things. These are the 4 Ps, and you'll see our phases here divided into those 4 sections. To begin with, a definition, really what's out there on technology impact assessment. Some people have called it ethical impact assessment or global impact, or some kind of derivative thereof. What is technology impact assessment? And many of us have been sold the idea it's a product. It's a document that perhaps lists 10 top technologies that are complex and emerging, and how we deal with them and what their consequences are. But perhaps we want to stress here that technology impact assessment is a process. But really look at that open literature that we have access to as academics, as industry personnel, as white papers from government, and delve into that, knowing full well that there are so many closed aspects of TIA. But really we want to also establish the ecosystem at large. Who are the stakeholders, primary, secondary, and so forth, that make up the audience and those involved in the production of technology impact assessments, and how are they utilized and where? And perhaps what are the government policies out there that espouse the need for these processes. In our second phase is the intervention phase. Perhaps we can call it a socio-technical intervention. We often hear the word technology impact assessment, but perhaps we want to broaden that out to a socio-technical impact assessment, where we not only invite technological perspectives, but also social and environmental. Environmental being those rules, regulations, and policies that help us to understand how do we utilize tech impact assessments in the real world. Again, this multi-stakeholder approach, for whom are technology impact assessments for, and who contributes to them? Certainly the public has had an isolated view of these things. Their participatory actions haven't really been recognized, but how do you open this up? And these are things that we're postulating at the moment once we've completed our thorough literature survey and landscape analysis, but also to look at it from a multi-level analysis perspective. Micro, meso, and macro, right from the individuals and employees in organizations right through to organizations themselves, and then governments, and through a collaborative process that's open and transparent. Once we've put that intervention into place, stressing the joint and collaborative nature of our work, we want to test this with the community, and some of our workshops and webinars, as Bharath said, will be about testing the ideas we have formed as a community. And there the reconfiguration takes place in the third phase, where we start to look at the public-facing nature of technology impact assessments towards bilateral agreements and multilateral thereafter. And this continuous monitoring. Tech impact assessments are not one-off things, they're continuous, and technologies are not siloed. Today in our complex mesh network, we can understand technology as an entangled phenomenon that's very much meshed and interdependent and interconnected. And finally, we hope through these 8 webinars, these workshops, and this continual feedback we'll receive from the global community with an emphasis on India and Australia, that we may form a community of practice by which we can, together in a transdisciplinary manner, create a self-organizing, self-sustaining community that will implement this in practice, going from that purpose, plan, process into the practice element. And finally, just some contextual information. We are focused on India and Australia, but we'd like to open up this to expert participation across the world. If you're interested in listening today and want to participate, please give us your feedback at the end of the webinar. But really, we're collecting data at this stage. We are going to do up to 20 expert interviews focused on Australia and India, but also with global experts. The analysis will take the form of literature reviews in a qualitative thematic analysis manner, going through to design workshops where we emphasize co-design and participation towards co-creation of these artifacts and processes and reconfiguration that we're saying no longer should we be doing individual, countrywide, nationwide, merely tech impact assessments, but going towards joint. And finally, of course, as Bharath stressed, the delivery of our briefing reports, our 2 research papers, and the educational programs, which I think you'll be wishing to hear more about. So over to you, Glenn, again.
Thanks so much, Katina, for that excellent overview of where we're going and our ambition and our inclusiveness, please, if people would take note of that invitation, both for the current project, because of the way we're proceeding, which will be interacting with experts and stakeholders, but also into the community of practice phase afterwards. And one of the transitions into the community of practice will be education products associated with our analysis in this area. And we want these to be open education products. For those of you familiar with us, you might be aware of many of our own endeavours in the past to work into developing micro-credentials, professionals and mid-career officials and the like. And we see this as quite congenial and compatible with this project, now taking that enthusiasm into this area of critical emerging technologies and making ways of assimilating that, dealing with it, preparing for them, and adjusting to these emerging changes through the education process is the best way forward.